It's the 15th day. Wait. Did April do the thing like yesterday?
We were waiting to see if anything... Maybe they were loving us small.
Yeah. April forgot.
April forgot they were in love. Wait,
Kipto
when they
was
come down
busy.
from the
He
high...
had gone for Valentine's Day.
That's what I'm telling you.
When
the feelings have disappeared,
Ednah,
like now...
Ednah says they actually did. Hebu share that. So mafuta imeshuka ama imepanda ama mafuta iko sawa? Imeshuka. Tuma hiyo kitu tuone tu. So it did. Yesterday the shilling was doing its good thing. The mafuta has gone down. You know, the economic outlook of this country. Niliwaambia. Tutatengeneza nchi. Tumepanga.
Tutafanya.
Tuko na mikakati.
Tumeshikanisha.
Sasa mnaanza kuona matunda.
Okay.
Going forward. Okay. So today is 15th. Mafuta is cheaper.
Okay. By how much?
Ednah is going to send that thing shortly.
All right. Okay.
1 shilling is a lot, Ednah. It's a shilling.
1 shilling is a lot. I'm telling you.
Next month. Goja uone next month. When goja. Usiende mahali. You will see. Tashuka by more.
Okay. So.
Dollar sign ngapi?
149,
149, 150 like this. Goja.
Yeah.
The outlook is good, Diana. The outlook is good.
I don't know. I'm actually very... Latiff, actually, even his gesture is really tutatenga.
It's positive.
Gosh.
You've got to be positive.
It is?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. It is. Even civil servants want a pay increment.
Yeah, those ones will deal with them. Watch a shilling kwanza to stabilize. Kila mtu tapatia ka allowance kidogo namna hii. Watu wa civil society ndio watupai kitu.
Okay.
Diana Gichengo is our guest for the next hour. She is the national coordinator of the Institute for Social Accountability, TISA, which is also a member of the Okoh Uchumi movement. Vugu la Okoh Uchumi. Welcome to the Situation Room. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy Valentine.
Such things.
Ash Wednesday. Okay. Repent.
Wow.
Repent, Kenya.
What else?
and then be on the lookout for your pocket now and in the future.
Very good.
Yeah.
What color is that?
It's aqua. It's turquoise. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Hey, so it's called turquoise.
Unajua venye niko na maringo, by the way, tutaringa.
Tumepanga.
Tutaringa.
Okay, Diana, karibu sana. You'll tell us what Okoh Uchumi have been doing. We know that you've previously gone and filed several petitions, seeking transparency into the national debt. It's the same thing. So now we have a new one. We have the Eurobond. Mm-hmm. In the domestic market, we've been borrowing. Yesterday, there was some good cash that was taken at the domestic market, some 280 billion shillings from the infrastructure bond and more. Like this, like that.
Yeah.
Lakini tuna stabilize huyu mgonjwa. City is not in. He'd have given you the day's proverb. But now I have the day's proverb. This week the proverbs are from Angola.
You've grown up. You've come of age.
Oh yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. The proverb goes thus.
Wow.
You cannot do without water, even if it drowned your child.
Okay.
You want me to say it again?
Yeah.
You cannot do without water, even if it drowned your child.
Wow. Are you setting up me up on this discussion on debt that you cannot do?
No.
Indeed, you cannot do without water. It is necessary for all aspects of life, but it's also very risky. It can drown you, can drown your child, your livestock. If you live in Nairobi, it can destroy all your electronics, but you will still need it. Even after the flood and the storm, you still use water to clean, to nourish your life. So in life, there are things you really need, but you just cannot give up on something that is good just because it has certain risks. You manage the risks, I think.
It's a necessary evil.
Yes.
Okay. Ndu?
Yes.
What do you think?
I think.
You think? Very good. Very good. It's good to think this way. Diana, Okoh Uchumi has been pushing for some things in terms of just what our debt situation is. We've got the various bonds, both domestic, international. We've got loans that have been taken, multilateral, bilateral, and all those. What is the current push by Okoh Uchumi?
The current push by Okoh Uchumi is, first, we cannot continue with unknown debts. What do I mean? The last time Treasury informed us, we are at 11.6 trillion of debt. That's a huge increase, and most of it was attributed to interest because of the change in the shilling. Now, you wake up and you're told you are at 10 trillion, 10.6, 11, 11.6. This is debt. And when you discuss debt, we must recognize that it is deferred taxation. Right now, it is debt. But by the time one of the Eurobonds that matures in 2048, where will you be, Latiff? How old?
I don't know.
How old?
I have no idea. How many years are we talking about? 24 years from now?
Yeah,
about
24 years from now.
From now.
Sheesh.
Okay? But
Okay.
that's a debt that we have
I'll be
taken
approaching
up
70.
right now.
Then
Somebody will repay it at that particular point. What will be the return on investment? What's the impact of the interest rate? Because this is a loan that has been taken out in foreign currency. The current Eurobond that has matured, that was issued in 2014, was issued at an interest rate of 5.87. We are repaying it at 10.9 interest. We got $2 billion US. The Auditor General says we never saw it in the economy. And now we are repaying it. Using what? Tax and more future tax in the form of debt. So all we are saying first is we have a constitution that laid out mechanism for how we acquire debt. We need to know from the time an infrastructure bond and a Eurobond is advertised, who is underwriting this particular debt? Are they people who will come and say, wow, we got Kenya a good deal? Or is it every time we are beating the market by giving creditors the best of terms, which is the case? Look at the infrastructure bond that was announced yesterday. 18% interest. Loaning to government has become the most profitable thing for anyone to do, including banks. So we are saying we must question all these processes, and especially because of intergenerational equity. Now, most of the time we've relied on Article 201, and Article 201 is on principles of public finance that requires a very, very high standards of openness, accountability, and public participation in all matters finance. So by the time the government floats a Eurobond at the highest interest rate in Africa, Kenyans ought to have consented. But away from that, this is my favorite article nowadays, 211, borrowing by national government. The national government, parliament, by legislation may prescribe the terms on which national government may borrow, impose reporting requirements. Within 7 days after either House of Parliament so request by a resolution, the Cabinet Secretary responsible for finance shall present to the relevant committee information concerning any particular loan or guarantee, including all information necessary to show the extent of total indebtedness by way of principal and accumulated interest, the use made or to be made for the proceeds of the loan, the provision made for the servicing of the repayment of the loan, and the progress made in the repayment of the loan. If this is what Parliament can sanction within 7 days, it ought to be information we have from the get-go.
Okay, so if we were to break that down a little bit and explain it, essentially what this Article 211 says is that should government, the state, borrow, you must make very clear, number one, what the purpose of it is.
Yes.
You must make sure you make aware, and this is aware to Kenyans.
Yes.
Whatever method you want to use, public gazette, whatever, you must then make known the amount, the source. You must then make known the repayment. You must then also make sure you make aware the purpose. Now, as you are paying back, you must then also make known how much you have paid, how much is left,
interest,
how much is interest. All of this should be made known. So we're saying in the event that none of these things happen, we're looking at a contravention
Of the Constitution. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, you're brilliant.
Thank you. Now, in this current state, very few of those things that Article 211 has outlined is actually happening. That there is ambiguity around how much does Kenya actually owe. That 11.6 trillion, is it one? Is it a compilation of all of them? Who lent where? How is it being paid back? Is it domestic debt? Is it external? What is it? Is the character of this debt everything that Kenya has borrowed over the last how long? Who is it owed to? What did it do? None of those things are being made public.
Yes.
We don't know.
Yes.
The debt register, do we know?
None is being made public.
Most of it is not being made public. Yeah, at least we get to know the total amount. There are also declaration that this year we are going to repay this much in interest, this much in principal.
Okay.
But broken down, it is not. And debt ought to be borrowed with a very, very specific target for a development.
Okay.
Project that is not being made public, and this has also been communicated by the Auditor General and the Controller of Budget. They have greater access than Okoh.
The Debt Register Office, there is an office that exists for this purpose. I don't know what the latest update is, but I believe the last conversation that we had, we're looking at a 2018-2019 update. It may have changed. I mean, for purposes of this conversation, we're not sure if it actually has, but is there no public information about these things that are being sought after? Because it would appear as though now, not that it appears, we know that more debt is being put on the shoulders of the nation.
Yes.
And the money that has been borrowed essentially is to pay debt. This money that is being borrowed most recently is not for any development project, it's to pay debt.
And there is nowhere in the Constitution, in the Public Finance Management Act, where we are allowed to borrow to pay debt. We borrow
for development.
We are allowed to borrow short term, 3 months, to just ensure the government remains liquid. 3 months. Now we are borrowing 10 years, an infrastructure bond of 8 years, a Euro bond, 8 years, 10 years, to repay more debt. All the money that is coming from multilateral institution is all going to repayment of debt. Now, Parliament and especially the Public Debt and Privatization Committee have kind of listened. And they said, let's audit the debt that was acquired 2022, 2023. They are still reviewing that, and it shows serious anomalies. If you are running a business, and you're told how you're running your books is problematic, what do? You pause.
Hold on and check it, audit.
You audit it, you check, you change. You even bring people who will help to improve. But what have we seen? The infrastructure bond that was issued yesterday, it has everything else to woo the creditor, but nothing for Kenyans. The purpose is not stated. Now, I know most of us, and I've spoken to my friends who are like, Diana, surely, what is wrong with you? You will never buy a farm. You will never run a business that gives you better interest than this. What business does Kenya do that we have a guarantee that we can pay such high amounts of interest? All it means is we are getting very ready to burden Kenyans more. And as the government issues very high interest rates on the bond, companies are closing. Manufacturing institutions are the biggest defaulters in banks. Ordinarily, the history of no taxation without representation was my small Christian community is called St. Thomas of Aquinas. And St. Thomas of Aquinas said you should not have debt. The history of government was debt was a bad thing. And if you borrowed, therefore, as debt evolved, sovereign debt was to be at the lowest interest. You see, the same way taxation is a patriotic duty, that has been the negotiation around sovereign debt. That is why we borrowed from other governments who understood that we have an obligation to support citizens of other sovereign nations to develop. The minute public debt has such high interest, it affects every sector. At this point, as Okoh Uchumi, based on where we are, in addition to debt accountability, we are saying, is it time to renegotiate as a people? Are we okay with 8 shillings going to debt repayment and leaving nothing for essential services?
Okay. So what are the options?
So the options that we are proposing, one is we've gone to court around accountability for all debt contracts. And that's a process that then we would get an order, but Parliament has an opportunity based on their constitutional mandate to already proceed and initiate on their own motion audit of all debt. All odious debt, therefore, should not be paid. Any debt that was not acquired, utilized, or repaid according to the Constitution is unconstitutional. That should be set aside, and whoever made those bad decisions for we, the Kenyan shareholders, then takes liability for that. Secondly, it is time to relook at the fact that debt has to be a fast charge. What percentage, we must create expenditure caps and repayment caps. For an economy like Kenya, we are saying it is time to say how much must be spent on education, on water, on health, as we repay debt. So that's a conversation that is of a national nature and need to move now from Treasury and move to Parliament. And we commence our own conversation. The countries that have done this are largely Burkina Faso in the 90s, Argentina. We redefine our debt agreement and renegotiate with all the creditors. We will repay you. But for now, the people who will repay you are these taxpayers. They need to be alive in 2048 to raise taxes to pay this Eurobond. But if we continue with the current expenditure, we are going to affect that.
Okay. Diana, what is the process here? So you're saying that Parliament can initiate an audit of all the debt at present. At best, how long do you give them to actually conduct a forensic audit on the debt? Because it's not just an audit of a check. It's you want it to be forensic. This is a shilling that was acquired in this debt. It was earmarked for this project. Okay, it was not. But then where did it end up? And if it didn't end up in something that is beneficial to the citizen, then we call that, right? We put it aside. If this was not acquired constitutionally, we put it aside. And all those, that has to be a very deep dive into our debt. How long should Parliament take?
I think for all the debt, particularly for the last 10 years, with the institutions that we have and resources, we should be able to get an expansive team that takes 6 months.
So 6 months of auditing the current debt.
Yes.
In the intervening 6 months, are we repaying the debt or have we paused repayment of debt?
Luckily for some of the debt, there is debt that is already flagged by our institution. I think any debt that is already flagged as questionable, Parliament can then pause that particular repayment.
What would that mean? Does Parliament have the power to say we are not going to pay you?
The person who contracts debt has delegated power from Parliament. Therefore, the person who has the ultimate power on debt in Kenya is Parliament.
Okay. But once you've already acquired the debt, can you say, I'm not going to pay you until I find out where the money went?
Yes.
Without any repercussion?
There would be repercussions, definitely.
Okay.
There would be repercussions of if we therefore go ahead and pause this and we are wrong. All processes and procedures, due diligence was done, then we are liable for penalties. But even without that audit, we have faced so many penalties because even within Treasury, some of the debt contracts, we do not understand them. The people who contracted them do not understand, so we keep accruing penalties. So it is a balancing act. It is a balancing act of what is the best thing for this country. Do we continue on this trend that continues to burden us, seems to be draining us and drowning us, or do we take very decisive steps? Countries, think about the tuna bond. Nobody thought a nation like Mozambique would go after people who thought they had procured a Eurobond for infrastructure very well. But based on the strength of their investigation, that debt has been removed from the debt records and the debt burdens of Mozambique. That then is a possibility that will change the current trajectory. Because think about it, how comes we are the country that is issuing the highest interest rates for both domestic and international bonds?
So it seems pretty high, but then the rationale behind it, is that being questioned? Why would you do something so high? Can you actually afford to pay that kind of interest on a bond for whoever would purchase? Can you afford to pay? Or will you get to the point whereby you say, actually, we're not able to meet this obligation of payment of interest, and then we fall back on that? What does that mean? That essentially you got money for which you're not ready to take responsibility for in the future?
Yeah.
Is that what we are saying?
That's exactly what we are saying. And we're already on that trajectory. That since the first Eurobond, every maturity, we have met the obligation by issuing another Eurobond. So a debt to pay a debt. That is not even sustainable. And it also means that our credit risk levels are very high. So every time we have to issue it at a higher interest rate. For the longest time, sovereign debt never exceeded 2%. We are at 10% for international. Domestically, we are at 18%. What that means is locally, borrowing for anybody who is a high-risk creditor, high-risk debtor, all these people who have defaulted on Tala, Fuliza, and so on, is 25 and above. What development can you do when you're repaying loans at 25%? But most importantly, that money, we will never see it in the Kenyan economy. But the Kenyan economy and the Kenyan people are the ones who will ultimately meet this obligation. Until we realize the level of participation that is required to reset.
I'm sorry, I think the word that you used is who then is responsible for this part? Who takes the responsibility or takes the position to ask these questions? And it baffles me. I don't understand. So please, if you can make it so that I can understand. I'm usually easy to explain things to. If we know there is a problem, which clearly there is, the law has stipulated certain things. If you're going to borrow, let it be for this development. You can also borrow in the short term to meet, obligations such as, completing your, financial year for recurrent expenditure. You can borrow in the short term for that, but then it must be pegged direct. Okay? So those are the two instances which Kenya can borrow according to constitution. We understand. Now we have seen that borrowing has taken place. It's clear that's public.
Yeah.
But we don't know what it's for exactly. In most cases. And the extent to which it has been returned, we also don't know. We then introduce bonds. And for we don't understand what that is. Essentially, the government is borrowing money from you who may choose to put your money there.
Yeah.
You who may choose to put your money there. You buy a little piece of the government, essentially. And then over time, as they return that money, they'll give it to you with a little bit of extra on top. Sir?
Yes.
All right. What we are saying now is that the government doesn't know right now where it's going to get that little something on the top that they're going to give back to you. They don't know where that's going to come from.
Correct.
It's in hope, right? And that money essentially that they're taking from you, they're taking it to pay back this other money that they owe. But whatever it was used for, this money,
not know.
We don't know.
Yes.
Now, the folks who are tasked with the responsibility to answer these questions that we're asking is Parliament. Why are they not asking the question? We've been told, like you said, Eric, the CS Treasury sat here and said, yes, an audit needs to be done. The majority leader said, yes, we're going to ask questions. When will it happen? And then who then will push Parliament to say, come on, guys, the country is on its knees. Can you start finding out what's going to go, what has happened here?
Spot on. Why is Parliament not asking these questions? First, it is political expediency and political correctness. All along, over the years, they have known this is their mandate. Parliament is usually given an induction of 3 weeks. I'm sure they are taken through all chapters, including public finance. But the minute they are told, approve this budget, this is my budget as the executive, they forget who elected them, they forget that we have a constitution, and they approve budget deficits. Now, what is most ridiculous, and it happened this year, luckily Parliament redeemed themselves, was Treasury had introduced an amendment that said we will be breaching debt limits, debt regulation, and then we notify Parliament of the breach after 3 months. That such an amendment can find its way to the floor of Parliament speaks to the impunity around management of fiscal policy in this country. The institution that is supposed to be the bearer of the public purse is told, we will steal from you, we'll cut the purse, we will bring a new purse, but we will notify you after 3 months. That was then halted. They created a public debt committee that has sanctioned an audit already. But that must be done simultaneously with other committees. The Finance and Planning Committee this year, while reviewing all the plans and the Budget and Appropriation Committee in reviewing the budget policy statement, must pause and not just review the medium-term strategy that usually has very good English, but no questions about where are we getting this money. This is a year where if anybody was confused about why we say it is important to analyze debt for exchange gain and loss risks, for the relations with other countries, for the utility, this is the 1 year that it is very clear. So if Parliament cannot be just asking questions about CDF. CDF is a very small percentage compared to what we are using on debt. If they do not ask the question, who are the employers of parliament? It is the Kenyan people. And that's the next phase of Okoh Uchumi. Because we have knocked, we have informed, this discussion that we're having today, TISA did an analysis of the opaqueness, the impact of the Eurobond, raised all these questions early 2022. We presented it to Treasury, to Parliamentary Budget Office, to parliamentary committees. They decided this is some other noise from civil society. But the Kenyan people ultimately are the ones who are feeling this pinch. So it is time to take this conversation to the Kenyan people. A president in Kenya is elected using about 7 million signatures. All we are seeking to do as Okoh Uchumi is collect 10 million signatures to say, stop.
Stop what?
Stop the continued indiscipline on debt. Pause any borrowing. Pause any repayment. Okay? And we want everybody, look for your MP. Look for your MP. It won't be a petition that we take to the speaker. It will be based at every constituency level where we explain, everybody is able to explain to their MP the impact of this. And if it means a recall of all the MPs based on this, so be it. At that point, we hope they will wake up to their mandate and finally get rid of this continued indiscipline that is just getting us into deeper and deeper problems. So it is time for the Kenyan people to be engaged. For all those Kenyan people who are buying this at 18%, I hope it will be worth it. The profit you get will be worth it for your grandchildren. To put it into context, think about how we take care of pregnant women. You want to do everything for this child, but that's only 9 months. Debt matures up to 30, 50 years. So imagine the analysis, the surgical incisiveness we need in designing our debt, utilizing it, auditing it. We cannot continue on this omnibus. It's omnibus borrowing, yeah.
Diana, tell me, please, as TISA and Okoh Uchumi, because there are many things that you've said you've tried here, you've hit walls here and there. Please list for us, what are those things that you've done in furtherance to this question of accountability of our debt?
So we started off by coming together with other institutions and presented in 2018 to the CS Treasury all our concerns around debt. We've been at the forefront of saying, let's have a public debt management office, create a sinking fund. All these proposals were taken. We've been to court demanding SGR contracts. So that once we understand them, then we are able to even analyze and raise the needed questions on accountability and even cooperate. And tell Kenyans, let us repay, let us all move to SGR. But we've never gotten those particular contracts.
Never gotten the contracts.
We never got the. We went to court. We went to court,
asking the court to compel the government to release.
Yes, but remember, before we go to court, we always first write to government.
Right.
We write to government and ask them, give us this contract. We are Kenyan taxpayers. We would like to view this document. When we do not get, and that process usually takes between 6 months to a year. When we do not get the contract,
from the requisite ministry, State Department, then you went to the Ombudsman's office.
Went to the Ombudsman. Back the first SGR contract, the Ombudsman's office had not been activated. So we wrote to Treasury. Then we were directed to the AG. We wrote to the AG. We didn't get. That's when we moved to court. And we've moved all the way to the Supreme Court, but we were told these are government dealings. Then we were redirected to Parliament.
Okay.
The same
court told you to seek Parliament's support
Yes.
in securing these contracts. Okay. Did you go to Parliament?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And you have seen, even the CS Transport said they are taking the contract to Parliament. It has never arrived.
So Parliament does not have these contracts?
No.
Or Parliament wrote back to you and said, we do not have the contracts?
So Parliament, at this point, it was not us pursuing. It was now the public and the parliamentarians pursuing it.
Okay.
There were even pledges by Kenya Kwanza that we will deliver the contract to Parliament. It was reported in the media that we are getting the contract. What was presented was just the financing agreement with the bank.
Did the parties that went to the courts, all the way to the Supreme Court, that entity, did it write to Parliament seeking contracts?
The only
as had been advised by the courts?
Muhuri has written to Parliament.
Okay.
Yes. And it's one of the parties.
Have they received any response from Parliament?
That Parliament has applied to get the contract as well, yes.
So Parliament just said, okay, we have asked government to
Yes.
give us the contract. Once we get it, we'll give it to you.
We will to the public.
Nothing has come since
Nothing
then.
has come.
Okay, that's SGR.
Then on Eurobond, we've moved to court. Again, after writing, we were told they are public contracts. This is traded in the global market.
Yeah.
Owners keep changing and so on. But we needed to know underwriters. What was the analysis done by financial expert, actuarial expert around all this? What guarantees were given that Kenya is getting a good deal? Thereafter, what is the from the contracts and everything? Where was the money going? Again, we are in court. We are waiting. We filed our petition. The Attorney General has replied. Both parties have given their submission. We are waiting. There has been 3 adjournments in court. We are waiting for a hearing date.
There have been 7 Eurobonds, including this latest one.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Are you saying that there is no documentation in government that shows you where the proceeds of Eurobond are going?
No.
It ought to be in a budget that money acquired through borrowing is going into this specific development project. Are you saying that Eurobond 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 does not feature in the Appropriations Acts?
The excuse that would be used is it features in the Appropriation Act as a deficit.
Okay.
Okay? As a budget deficit. That's approved by Parliament.
Yeah.
However, the Public Finance Act is very clear. Every loan acquired must be linked directly to a vote head that is development. Very, very directly. In this case, are we saying that debt repayment is development? Who made these amendments to the law?
That is for development, isn't it?
Debt is for development. Debt repayment is development, Latiff.
Debt repayment is recurrent.
It's recurrent, exactly. But the bulk of it goes to recurrent. And most importantly, the institutions with constitutional mandate to oversight how the expenditure of both tax and debt revenue is utilized have also flagged that it is not clear how the money was utilized. Not even what development project, how it was utilized at all.
And that's the crux here, isn't that what we are saying?
Yes, that's
so it's
very,
not
very
even
big.
that. It's more of a clear explanation, transparent explanation of where this money went, more than how are we paying it back?
Yes.
Because if you don't have an explanation of where it went, then that's why it becomes so painful for you to pay back something that you don't know. Because how much are we talking about here? Billions. Hundreds of billions. And I keep saying that if you put
Now there are trillions.
Sure.
Remember.
If you put 100 billion shillings into development in the country, you will feel it. You will see it somewhere. You will see an expressway. You will see something.
Yes.
if you put 100 billion, not talk less of 500 billion or 1 trillion shillings, even if it is over time, if it is over 10 years, 7 euro bonds, you will see it. You will see the effects of it. So the question is, where did this money go? And for me, I don't even think we should be asking anything else. I think the question should be very clearly, where did this money go? If there is a clear, logical answer, there are pathways towards what this development did. Was there rural electrification? Did it complete? Were there roads? So the network right now today is fantastic, and you can look at that network and you can say this is what was spent and this is where it went. What was it? Was there housing that was built? Was the education sector now boosted towards 100% feasibility? What happened that is commensurate to this money that was spent? If we can't answer those questions, if we cannot point to those things, we have no business talking about anything else. Because here we say, and the first charge is debt repayment on any money that comes into the fund. The first charge is debt repayment. But we don't know where that money went to. And that we are now saying that futurely, what did you say, that nice thing you said? That debt is deferred taxation, that Kenyans are going to have to pay for it. So what are Kenyans paying for?
Yeah, in the future. Those are the questions
we shouldn't be asking anything else apart from that. And there should be an insistence on that. Because we lose the gusto. You lose the train and then it sputters to a stop and then people now just go ahead and do whatever else. But there's got to be some kind of responsibility when it comes to the very livelihoods that Kenyans have.
And that's why this needs to stop being just some buzzwords, which is why I'm
let me
you're seeing me being
after
very specific
the
on
Eurobond
what actions you've taken.
And court, we've also gone and engaged the entire National Assembly leadership. And we presented to them, it is time to consider debt restructuring. It is time to look for odious debt and audit it. Use their institutions. And you have seen the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee has now even moved to the EACC. I told them one of the things that now you must investigate for corruption is public debt. So we have presented this within our powers as citizens to every single space.
It gets lost, Diana. That's what I'm going to. It gets lost somewhere in the middle of all this. When a parliamentary committee goes to the EACC and says, you guys audit, and then the EACC says, okay, we'll take it up. As we are auditing fake degrees, we are investigating fake degrees and how many people are stealing from government and all these are things, we'll also investigate this. If it is not a focused conversation, which brings me to my question, has Okoh Chumi presented a petition to the Petitions Committee of the National Assembly saying we want an audit of our debt? Is there a specific request sent formally to Parliament to say we, the citizens of Kenya, want an audit on the debt?
There has been specific request made to audit to the Public Debt and Privatization Committee. To audit debt in the last 5 years. Okay, that was presented. Now, one of the things that we do as Okoh is, after all this, because we are hit very hard, right now we are finalizing all our analysis based on the facts that we have on public debt. Then we launch now the public petition that I hope gets us to the point that you're insisting on, Latiff.
To the best of your knowledge, did that committee begin this investigation that was petitioned?
Yes.
Have they completed the investigation?
They sanctioned an audit for the debt for the last acquired over the 1 year, and the findings were released.
This was the 2022, 2023?
Yes.
The findings were released and tabled in Parliament?
Yes.
What's happened since then?
So it's still being considered, not yet been
by
completed.
Parliament.
Yes, by Parliament, because this is then transferred back to the Auditor General and brought back. It has raised questions and that show that we are not following the law.
Okay. So in the event you come to us as the public and we give you 20 million signatures, you're asking for 10, we give you 20.
Okay.
Then what?
Then
what happens to our signatures? Where are we taking them?
We are taking them to Parliament, and that is part of how we want to focus the conversation.
Okay.
Because one, there has been so many deviations. This is an issue that was for Parliament. At some point, it was taken to Bomas for dialogue. If all other issues, there were recommendation, this is the one area that there was no consensus and the report is very weak around. We have raised it. All institutions, majority and minority, have raised it. But it keeps going away and it is affecting us. So the 20 million is to focus the conversation, create timelines.
What is the door through which you shall enter Parliament with our 20 million signatures?
Yes.
Because
all of us enter, not just...
I'm asking for accountability
Okoh.
from you. You're
Yes.
asking for my signature. For me to give you that signature, tell me. So we give you the signatures. Are you taking them through that public debt committee? Are you taking them through the finance committee? Are you taking them through the parliamentary debt budget committee?
No, this goes to the House leadership.
Okay.
This goes to the House leadership, to the Speaker. And we are also saying, because of the importance and the overflow of the impact, we also want you to take that. We will have petitions that are presented at constituency level, so that every MP in Kenya will have this petition on public debt.
Okay.
Okay? At that level, we want every constituency to sit down and have conversation on deadlines and requirements that they want of their MPs.
Okay.
They hold them to account at that level. The national vugu-vugu, okay, then pushes for timelines and accountability at the national level.
Is your push for signatures with us coming with those timelines?
Yes, we will advise, but definitely it is a participatory process.
I'm heading towards, if Parliament does not act in 6 months, in a year, then what?
Then we recall you. We have our signatures already.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So organize that signature document. Come, let's discuss it.
Okay. And I will get your signature.
You come, let's discuss it. I don't guarantee you my signature. It's just going to be a waste of time.
Remember,
that's why I said.
Remember, I do not have more power than you, Latiff.
Of course.
We are all sovereign Kenyans. We must pull together to make this happen.
But there has to be a plan. Diana Gichengo is the National Coordinator at the Institute for Social Accountability, TISA, which is a member of the Okoh Uchumi. Accountability for sovereign debt. It's a very important conversation.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.